Let's start again then. So my name is Maarten Koeners. I'm from the University of Exeter, where I'm a biomedical scientist and teaches physiology. And a couple of years ago, I started to be interested in the biology of play, and I started a project a year ago, the Playful University. And from that, I'm really interested in the concept of playful academics, from really output-driven gamification to just a bit frivolous fun and everything in between. And today, as already people are doing, entering all kinds of associations with the word playful academic in the Mentimeter, please continue doing that. And the rest of my lovely panel will introduce themselves, and then we go back into the questions that we have lined up for today. But feel free to ask any questions for us. So John, you're up.
Hey folks, I'm John Cole. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a sex educator in Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA. I work in public schools, I work in community settings, and my specialty is educational live action role-playing game for sex education. That's me.
Kieran, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kieran Reed. I teach at Wits University in South Africa, and I'm head of the digital arts department. We run a full kind of game design program, and our core philosophy as a department is playfulness, and all the kind of rich permutations of it. And I have to say, I'm very happy to be on this panel because too often the term academic has some negative connotations, certainly in the environment that I'm teaching in. And this idea of the playful academic is a really exciting one for me. So that's me, and I'm excited for the panel.
John?
So I'm Chris Jeansonne, and I'm a lecturer at, no, that's all right. That's all right. I think I've still got my Discord name up from classes that I'm running in Discord. So I'm a lecturer in the Department of Communication and Media at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. My field is critical media pedagogy and critical pedagogy. But the direction that I ended up going with that is towards popular culture media pedagogy. So my research has been in superheroes in the classroom and other kinds of work like that. And a lot of what I've done is thinking about how to rehumanize our teaching of media. So re-emphasizing that experience of media and getting students to engage with that. So I'm new to game studies proper, but I'm working with Nick Miser in the games program, who's done such an amazing job with a lot of the organizing of these panels. And we're working towards gameful learning strategies and thinking about how to implement that in a lot of different kinds of classrooms. So I'm very excited to be on this panel as well, and greatly appreciate the chance to talk about it.
So I proposed a couple of questions around it, and the first one was what we associate with playful academic, and I see there are quite some interesting, exciting entries like cool professor, embodied learning, fun, misunderstood. And before we really go into a conversation, I want to share one slide today, and then I'll put my slide away. And that is my inspiration. So it's my kids, and I've asked them the question what play means to them, and I think it was a very beautiful answer, and will ground me at least for the discussion. Yeah, we've got a pleasure to share it with you. It was I think it should be up now. So it was when I was starting reading the book Play from Stuart Brown, where he looked at especially biology, but also in some human studies about play. And that although it looks apparently purposeless, it is apparently, so there is a purpose to it. And for how I have it in my mind and in my heart when I think about these things, is that play increases joy with respect for oneself and surroundings, and it's an enthusiastic activity in the now and highly interactive with what you're playing with and or with your players. And these are my mascots, if you like. So this is 5-year-old Liam. Oh, it's no sound. Oh. Then never mind. Then I'm just inspired by them. So I will just summarize what they're saying. Carrying your path of your life, love, making friends, and the other one I can show. When I asked him what is play, he gave a very visceral response, if you like. He just went playing, as you can see now in the video. So I was really, when I study biology, it's really nice that there is such a social aspect surrounded by play, what you also see in biology, but also a very physical aspect of what play is. So yeah, for me, I ask my kids a lot, but also my students a lot, what play means, and in my experience, it's very clear that it's very personal and subjective. Everyone has a unique set of understanding what play means to themselves, and there's a lot of overlap, of course. But yeah, a good example is always someone likes playing karaoke, but for another person that's just horrible and stressful. So it is sometimes non-overlap as well. So my first question for the panel today is how to create a culture that fosters play and playfulness. So I'm currently trying to do that with the Playful University Club I established in my university, where I do a lot of play and invite play experts to talk about play from all kinds of perspectives. So I had a professor talking about how to teach employability to students using D&D, but I also had a yoga instructor how to teach being more playful in your presence and in your mindfulness. And I've been doing that for a year and have relative success, although I'm still grappling with this question. So I'm really curious to know, maybe Kieran can start answering what his experience is with creating a playful culture.
Sure. So yeah, so I mean, it is a challenging thing, you know, especially because you have a bunch of students who arrive at university, and they're there to learn, and they're there to kind of, you know, it feels like that serious stepping stone in your life to some degree, right? Where you go out and you kind of learn there. You know, we try to foster it in a number of different ways. We're fortunate in that all of our students start by doing a course in game design. So even if they go on to study animation or any of those kinds of things, they have a course where they're making games. And in the act of kind of playing games and you know, thinking about how do I create play for someone else, we start to kind of foster that playfulness there. We also have, and we've worked really hard at creating a staff body that is profoundly engaged and playful with the students. You know, there's a game called Ninja where you have your arms out and you have to chop each other's hands. That's the first thing. Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing that every student does, you know, even before they get into the program. Part of their audition to get into the program is playing Ninja and then asking them what it's like. And we talk about that sense of kind of vulnerability, but at the same time safety. You know, the magic circle, the Hazinger's magic circle, is something that we carry on throughout. Sometimes we talk about it quite seriously, sometimes we joke about it. But you know, we just make sure that we're having fun in our job as well, and that we're playing in our job. In our panel earlier, Romeo mentioned that sometimes the staff between classes pull out their Nerf guns and chase each other around the building, trying to shoot each other, using students as human shields, and the like. So there certainly is a kind of playfulness that we make sure we're emulating for everyone. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some of the students are serious and there to learn. Some of them think that we're clowns, and quite ridiculous in the way that we are as the staff. But I think that also promotes them a liberty to be like, well, actually, this is a person, right? I've seen my lecturer laugh. I've seen my lecturer make a joke. I've seen my lecturer tease their colleagues. And then they, you know, kind of join in with us to some degree. occasionally we have the problem of over-familiarity in a playful environment where the students kind of take the jokes too far. And that's one of the challenges we're trying to figure out is like, oh, it's really great, you're playing with us, but actually this isn't the time or the place. So that's our big challenge as well at the moment, is figuring out that. But yeah, everything we do is fun, we hope. Even the serious engagement with difficult material and content.
I think you're addressing a very important point about basically giving the example, right? If the lecturers are playing, then they see that this is a place where the play can happen. What I do encounter a lot is that there's a fear as a lecturer to be playful, and then if a lecturer is not playful but wants to be playful, it quite often needs to go over a certain hurdle, because when they go into a classroom with the fear of failing their playfulness, then it's not going to be playful or not genuine, and they know, and then it's just another intervention, if you like, or another tool that they try to do. So with my what I try to do when I talk with people about playfulness in the classroom is encouraging a bit of self-reflection. What is my own playfulness? Is it that karaoke bar that is playfulness for me, or is it more like D&D, or is it? And you can even go further back, right, layer by layer, to what's your essence. And I believe if you really come to your essence, it will go. The fear will go away a little bit, but giving the example is very important, I think. What's your experience, John, about creating a playful culture?
I really resonate with going back to your essence, Maarten, because in my experience of teaching in sex education classrooms, there is no way to make it not awkward for teenagers. Luckily, I am awkward all the time, so I can sort of lean right into that. And I would say the biggest like classroom culture thing for teaching sex education in a playful way is using alibi. That is the ability to talk about something, a serious topic with another topic. I would say if I'm using games, it's either like directly with compassion or indirectly with alibi. Like a concrete example of this is I was teaching dating norms to a particularly shy group of high schoolers with developmental disabilities. And I framed it as I was a men in black from the government here to interview a classroom of regular teenagers on behalf of a teenage alien who wanted to study abroad on Earth and learn how to do normal teenager things. And just that tiny bit of separation allowed this group of particularly shy young people to be like, no, dating is like this. And like, this is when you meet the parents, and unlocked what would otherwise have been something they couldn't feel like they share. And outside of a specific classroom culture, because I am one of the only people doing sex education via games, I think it's important to share my knowledge with other people in my field, because I'm not in a games related field, that both grants me professional legitimacy, which I certainly will take, and also increases like the acceptableness of this, because you had mentioned getting to your essence to avoid the anxiety you have around being perceived as a weirdo around other professionals, and that is fully real for people. So I think both sharing what you know, or like both teaching, as I have in a EduLARP community of practice here in the Twin Cities, as well as inviting people to come observe, lets people find their own authenticity inside of like my version of what I do.
Thank you for that, John. Chris, can you share with us what your experience is with creating a playful culture?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of resonates with my long-term work with just media pedagogy and popular culture, and thinking about how much, all of the students are emotively connected to all of these films that they watch and TV and the games that they play. But then when we bring it into the classroom, there's this sort of, feeling that we have to seriousize it, right? That we have to disconnect from all of that affective connection that they have to it. And so I think trying to figure out ways to bring that back into the classroom is really important. I had one example. I've been sort of sitting on the curriculum committee for the university for my school, which I don't recommend if you're a very playful person. See, I've made you all laugh. You know where I'm coming from. And I had to propose one of my own classes, which it's the superheroes in the classroom class that I've been teaching for quite a while at other institutions. And I propose this as my catalog description. Superheroes have taken over the media. Will we beat them, join them, or attempt to change their ways? In this class, you'll hone your critical faculties beyond those of most humans. And as we unlock the secrets of this most pervasive of transmedial genres, we'll apply tightly focused beams of theory to mainstream work and seek out exceptional specimens that lie mysteriously hidden. You'll cognitively leap to survey the mediascape, then bring the hammer of praxis down, cracking through cultural walls. And it goes on this way. I proposed that, and they said, no, that's not okay. And I won't read you what the modified version ended up having to be, but I still use that description with the students. And I've asked students who've taken the class before, which one really, captures the spirit of the class and of what you want to do. And they all, of course, they want that first one. It captures more of what we're doing. And I think it gets them to internalize those critical tools and those critical, approaches to the media that we want them to have more fully, to actually do it in that playful way. They feel more connected to it rather than distanced from it.
That's really, yeah, it's a shame that they don't say no. I was just shouting in my head, yes, do it with the description. It was so awesome. So the next one I want to talk about is more specific in games, and if we have experience or thinking of games to create playful academics in ourselves, in our colleagues, let's go first there, and otherwise we can zoom in a little bit or switch a little bit for students itself, because if I'm talking about playful academics, I already consider my students or the students that I teach as academics, and they can be they can choose how they want to continue their journey, either playful or serious or mixed, or just be their unique selves. So we already briefly touched on the subject of getting the essence, right? Getting the essence of yourself, of playfulness, and does any game or anything or a book or anything come to mind where you can think about more professional development through games? And I will start with my attempt to do it. Is I don't know if you're familiar with the app Super Better from Jay McConaughey, where it's a mental health well-being app that you can gamify your journey to mental health, and we created a power pack, play to learn, and it's very simple. It's just prompts that I use with my colleagues and with my students, like what is your favorite book that gives you joy and makes you playful, and put it under your computer, under your laptop for a week or something. Simple like that, and then you get resilience points and things like that. So this is my attempt to introduce a game for going to this essence of playfulness. And maybe start with John. So with sex education, do you need to train other people to do it in your way, like playfulness as well, or are people coming to you having conversation with you? I want to be more playful in my sex education as well, and do you have then a game to help them with that, or is it just go outside and kick a football, or I don't know what comes to mind when I talk about this?
When I'm talking about training other professionals in this style, I'm primarily doing it not in non-gamified ways. However, I have considered adapting my own work, LARP Jam, which is a short LARP creating workshop for first-time LARP creators. And the only things it offers is a really tight time window and really tight fictional constraints, or I guess like mechanical and fictional constraints. So all it is a design challenge in a super short window of time. Nothing more complicated than like an itch.io game design challenge in a short time delimited window. But as we all know, when people have a more specific concrete task under tighter circumstances, they can be wildly creative. So in a professional context, I'm like, choose a topic and then choose one of the three things that EduLARP is good at in sex education. Practicing skills, synthesizing multiple skills, practicing empathy or revealing people's values, right? I haven't used EduLARP to replace a lecture. I've used it to advocate for yourself with a medical provider. So choose that constraint, take 45 minutes and crunch it out design-wise. LARP Jam is available from johncole.itch.io. And the last thing I'll say is in the classroom, when I'm thinking about using a game, for me, it's too complicated to get I guess I don't have enough time to get a full-scale game in there. So I use valuable intellectual properties developed by multinational corporations as things to steal from. For example, my demonstrative lesson about how fast and invisibly a sexually transmitted infection can spread in a community is themed around the battle game Fortnite, where when they trade battle cards to win or lose, they're also, they don't know it at first, trading the possibility of an HIV infection. I'm not going to explain, I'll just use the buzzword that we use, trauma-informed care, to walk through that exercise, because it's with a group of teenagers talking about HIV and there's a surprise reveal at the end. It's on a knife's edge around people making fun of each other. So I can't explain all the professional skills I use to not screw that up, but mostly I don't.
Thanks for that, Johnny. I think it's also a good point that you said that you mentioned time, right? Or I haven't invested to gamify something, and I think it's when we're talking about the playful academic. Quite often, I come into a discussion about gamification and that it costs time. I need a lot of resources, but it can be as simple as having that Fortnite game. Just use it and. My office is full with little games like Story Diet or Fun Employment or all those kinds of things. And they're short. You don't need to prepare anything, and you can just modify it. And also Jackbox has a lot of games where like Drawful 2, and you can just I let them drawful. So I teach kidneys, so I let them draw all kinds of weird kidneys in Drawful 2 and. And that, yes, so you keep, it's not that I have a clear output of it, but again, it's giving the example. Just you can have fun with learning, and if you create a story together with your students, even if especially if it's very weird with story dice or something, it's something you remember years later, because that's how the brain is wired. That if you have associations with something weird or wonderful, just one example before I give Chris word for share his ideas, is that to teach quite something boring about membrane transporters in the kidney that transport potassium. Potassium is in bananas, and I just asked the students, how many bananas do I eat before I have a cardiac arrest and drop here in front of the class? And that's such simple thing, and you can, in other classes, you can go back to it. Remember the banana, that member, oh, okay, then they remember that transporter again. That for me is also playful, and you can also just name it charismatic or joke or whatever, but it can be as simple as that, and that doesn't cost time, or you don't have to gamify your whole module. Chris, anything to with us on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, depending on the class, I'm trying to find different ways to bring it either into the overarching kind of shape of the class, or into the individual units. I'm thinking about a film, kind of an intro to film class that I did recently, that I created a mise-en-scène game for, where students kind of created a scene, and then they populated it with characters, and then they had to populate that character with personality traits and how they acted. And in the different groups, they each came up with, through a randomizing process, like what category they would say next, and then each person had to kind of follow on that. You know the sort of game I'm thinking of. But then sharing it between their groups is always a joy, having them share what their results of those kind of games are. On a larger kind of institutional level, I feel lucky to have some people in the games program who want to talk about these sort of things. And I think now we've found some allies in our teaching and learning, groups and sort of institutional departments and programs on teaching and learning. And so we're trying to develop workshops on like approaches to teaching that are more gameful and that are more fun. So not this surface level gamification, but actually changing the spirit of your classroom so that it's more engaging. Yeah.
Kieran.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, the idea of development and stuff, I'm not sure, we don't really kind of have any tools like that or per se stuff. I think for us, it's the act of actually playing with students. I think the environment though that we're in, where it's a game design class, it kind of is a little bit easier to get into that. We don't have to kind of specify or put something particular for that. We'll play the students' games in front of them and with them. When they're playtesting, we're playtesting, but not like playtesting to mark and go, oh, you did this wrong. We're trying to enjoy and have fun with them. And we invite them to our board game groups, and we kind of engage on that manner. And that's sort of the development and encouraging the staff to all play the games together, to all take a chance at it, to all kind of, be involved in that active play. And I think that's really helpful for the students and for the staff when you're playing their game and then you start hysterically laughing. In particular, he was on the panel I was speaking on earlier about our class, Romeo. He has one of the most infectious laughs. He's a staff member and one of the most engaged and joyful spirit when playing. So basically, we just get him to play a student's game and the students feel like they're playing and feel like they're filled with joy. And we get him to play with other staff members and they're like, oh, I'm just having the best time ever. And it's simply just the kind of personality and the fact that we can play every day for our classrooms. Today's class, we're playing a game. Tomorrow's class, we're playing a game. That's what we can do. And I think we're quite fortunate in the ability to do that in fostering that playfulness.
Thanks so much for Kieran. And I think the next one I would like you to comment as well, because it ties in with what you're just saying. So yes, you're fortunate you have this class setting where they are expecting or they immediately are immersed in a playful attitude. But if we, but if you imagine your university, the whole campus would be more playful and less serious. Is it something you would encourage, or is it only in my head?
I mean, I would definitely encourage it. It would also mean that Chris wouldn't have to go to those curriculum meetings and have and if I mean, there's so many meetings, and the higher up the ladder you go, so not necessarily the students, the more dry it is. As soon as you get to the deans and it feels like everyone feels like we have to do something so serious and we have to do something that is so meaningful, and it absolutely is. Education is that meaningful thing. But if we could instill in a campus a way in which we can show the students that we actually enjoy teaching, and that's why I had that slight apprehension around the term academic, because for me, someone who's just a researcher and doesn't enjoy teaching is a very different position from someone who actually enjoys their teaching and is engaged with, oh my gosh, my student learned this amazing thing and I'm filled with joy around that. How to do that on the campus, I have no idea. My university, when I was a student, had a big pillow fight, but that was once a year and it was just a single event. And then everyone came to the lawns and had a big pillow fight. But I don't know how we foster it in a wider way than that. But I think it's something that we should all be aiming to do. And something that we should definitely try and promote. It's not something I've thought about before, but maybe I'm actually going to invite the Vice Chancellor and Deans to come play my students' games, and hopefully then maybe they'll be a little bit more playful in their approaches and stuff. But it's a hugely important thing. I have no idea what the solution is at the moment.
No, me neither. But I think it's an interesting one, and what my feeling, at least in the university where I am and the collaborators have, is that there is, especially actually the pandemic, because the online meetings has often has exaggerated the seriousness or the dryness. So if you don't have the more casual of chat in your boardroom and just go on a Zoom meeting where you really have to wait your turn. So I've got the feeling there's quite a lot of appetite, and when I'm talking to professors in play in higher education, they do see quite a shift, that they have fought a lot of battles in the past that it was really frowned upon, but for example, me getting a grant to do a playful academic project, a playful university project that shows you that there is some appetite for that. Interesting, you said that researchers that need to do teaching and that want to do teaching, they of course are often not the most playful academics in their classroom, but I think there's also opportunity for creating playfulness in research because it's so related to creativity. And I always hammer down in my medical biology students, if you want to do research, you need to develop your own creativity. It's not just remembering stuff and being very good in one specific, solving one specific puzzle, but if you really want to create novel stuff and novel drugs and etc., there needs to be creativity. I think play is you can't, even from a scientific and biological perspective, you cannot separate play from creativity. What yeah, go ahead.
No, I 100% agree, and you know, it's one of the things I try to tell my students is that, you know, if you're doing the scientific method, you're playing, right? Play is a form of experimentation. It's you play, you know, and the word, we spend a lot of time thinking about that word because sometimes it's used quite derogatory in like, oh, you're just playing around, right? Meaning that it's like you said in the one slide that it's a useless activity. But you do play with ideas, right? The scientist, the artist, the filmmaker, you know, the engineer, the architect, they're all playing with ideas. What happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? You're testing, you know, the boundaries. And that's why I think the whole campus, like you say, should be going, well, I'm actually playing. That is what I'm doing. That is what research is. That is what thinking is. There's that definition, and I'm going to forget who it is, that play is free movement within a rigid structure. And for me, that's the definition I stick to, and I try to tell my students, because that is what experimenting is, right? There's this rigid structure, the laws of physics, the laws of this or that, and you're testing the boundaries. You're going like, well, maybe what happens if I prod there? What happens if I do this? So I absolutely agree, and I try to get my students to understand that everyone is playing, not just them because they're game designers. It's the scientists. It's absolutely everyone.
Yeah, can I build on that one?
Yeah. Go.
One of the other faculty that we're working with is teaching a class on thermodynamics. And so in discussions with that faculty, you know, the question is like, well, if the students don't learn this, then things are going to burn up, and, you know, things are going to, when they're designing some new product, it's going to catch on fire, right? So the students need to learn this. It's serious. But I think one of the points that we're trying to make is, great, this is a simulation where you could design it and they could actually learn a lot by designing something that would blow up and that would catch on fire. And to make that a part of that process of learning. And I think, you know, as we're designing the classes, you know, to set them up to fail and to sort of fail forward and to fail and learn through that failure, and not even see it as failure anymore, is part of what I think we're doing. You know, all classes are simulations, all classes are games already. So why not design it in a way that's going to get them to learn, knowing that later on they're going to be designing some product that they don't want to catch on fire. But while they're in the class, they can design one that does.
Point, Chris. Yeah, I think what I've seen is there's quite a fear of failing and more, because then you need to tick all these boxes to, especially I see that mostly in medical students, they have been trained to tick all these boxes, and as soon as they fail one, then they're out of the running to become their dream profession. And of course you can't feel allowed to fail if you're doing heart surgery, but you learn the best by failing in a safe environment, or at least a secure environment, and control the rigid structure that Kieran was talking about. So yeah, John, how do you think we can create a more playful campus?
I think I will pass on this question. The original question was about
All right.
changing a system, and I work for a public school, quite a difficult system to change.
Fair enough. I'm not personally, from my point of view, I'm not talking about the playful system. Again, I look at it as the same as we had with your Fortnite game. Is that sometimes you can be very simple interventions or simple things like. One thing I'm setting up at my university is a library of games, which is not for students, but it's actually for educators. So you can only borrow the games. And there's also Jackbox, so also for online, but also lots of physical games. And then they're just there, and then you can expose the educators with it. Another thing I'm setting up is compassion through play. When you think about my value that I shared, creating more joy, then it overlaps a lot with compassion. Not necessarily the compassion on the side of bereavement, but the compassion of recognizing someone who's struggling, like with time or like with engaging with students, and then do something about it. And that is something, again, with the pandemic, where there's a lot of appetite for how do we create a compassion. How can you be compassionate in an online room, for instance? And I think creating a lot of awareness, and I'm setting up a festival and stuff like that. My vision is to then not change the system, but just have it. I think awareness is the most the word that comes up from me. That you're aware you don't have to be serious in the boardroom. You can also be a little less serious or compassionate to play. Okay, so the next one. So we have 10 more minutes. We have what research will help develop, foster playful universities. You can talk about that, or we can talk a little bit more about if we're talking about awareness. Are there any ideas to create like toolkits for people to use? And actually, I've been talking quite a lot. So if there's anything else about Playful Academic that you want to raise now or share or talk, then please do, John, Kieran, and Chris. And then we can spend the last 10 minutes for there. So Chris, what comes to mind and what do you want to share on this panel before we go to questions?
I think, I'm often thinking about classroom practice first and foremost, but that's where I come from, and trying to make it a more playful classroom. But I think a larger institution and kind of the community that gets built becomes so important. I see in our games, simulations, and arts and sciences program, the faculty and the students put together game nights, and they have been doing so through COVID times. And that's been so amazing. And it's something that I've been able to connect students in my classes to. Even, setting up, we started to write a grant and work towards a grant for expanding our games library, both to include physical games, but also we have a lot of students who are interested in video games, but then creating some kind of a library that had an archival, games that could simulate the actual historical periods of video games and the way that games were played in the 80s and what they looked like and such. And just creating these sort of realia, even in the digital age and other kind of zones of connection, just seems so important. So yeah, building these games libraries and thinking about how they're going to work. I'm thinking a lot about this balance between kind of critical media engagement, but also kind of reflexive awareness of media, and how those can tie in with just repersonalizing the educational process so that we balance. I think a lot of people in the chat have also been talking about this balance between goal-oriented nature of education, but then what we're trying to encourage through this kind of playfulness. And I think it's being able to balance those two and address both of those at the same time that becomes really important. Because we are also talking about real human connections that we're establishing that can often deal with important and serious things. So I'm sort of rambling here, but thinking about making those game nights, connections, spaces for students to interact on their own, spaces for them to interact with us as faculty in games and through games. So yeah, that was my ramble of some of the things that we're doing.
Thank you for sharing. I think what you mentioned with the physical game, I feel that's fascinating as well, because it can change a lot how you feel physically, but also how you connect with people, and not much when you're face to face in a classroom and you do even a game like Pictionary, it becomes already quite physical, just drawing on a board or whatever. But there are, I think, say, especially with all the Zoom rooms, etc., sitting still for your computer is quite a play killer, if you like. And for this panel, I was thinking, shouldn't I do something playful? We don't sit, but we've run through the time, so you're safe. I'm not gonna suggest any physical games that we need to do, but you can do things like what I did yesterday. Is just as an icebreaker, I let everyone turn their cameras off and then choose a color and then try to create your whole world behind your camera with a jumper or whatever in a certain color, and then I shout out the color, and then people came up with amazing hoodie colors, and then they've been doing some physical running around, and I always forget that I need to do it as well, so I'm running around the house to get red blankets and stuff, or ask them to get an item from a different room. So and that it really changes how they are in the Zoom room. So playing physically, I think, is super important in my point of view. Kieran, oh yeah, John, go ahead.
Thanks for letting me steal that. I want to talk about live action role playing as a way to get really embodied. Sexual health is an embodied series of practices, and so I want to make my education as embodied as possible. Another thing that's valuable about doing analog games for me in the classroom is I don't need my institution's permission or budget to like print out some cards and like get creative. No one needs any technical skill beyond like having some experiences as a game designer. If I was going to shout one more thing into the void, though, it would be that I think it's really important to think about consent. Once again, I'm a sex educator and I'm teaching inside of a coercive institution. My students did not necessarily want to come to school today, but they're in a classroom with me. So one of my design practices is always thinking about fallback strategies so people can participate in a way that they still earn their grade, but they don't have to be quite as weird. I'm like in the deep end of the pool, inviting everyone to come out past the waiting zone with me. But I always want to think about, you know, your interaction. Instead of performing it with one of your classmates here in a small group, you can script it with a buddy and don't have to read it out loud to anyone. So that's an important part of my design practice that may or may not apply to different situations.
Thank you for that, John. Kieran, do you have anything to add on this conversation?
Yeah, John, I really appreciate that point around consent. It is such a difficult thing, you know. I mean, I think about it when we play that ninja game, which I mentioned, which is part of the audition, and the students who feel so uncomfortable about it. And how do you kind of invite them into the play session, even as an audience member, not necessarily as an active player? Because, you know, we've all been talking about playing, but sometimes witnessing play is actually a really moving thing. We love to watch kittens play, right? That's, you know, that's why the internet still exists, is to watch kittens play. And, you know, there's a joy in that. And actually, that's one of the things that it links so nicely to what I was going to kind of conclude with, which is around exposure. To playfulness and exposure to the kind of value of play, because I know that we're in the School of Arts in particular, and there are other departments and other people in other fields that view their art as serious art and our art as just a game or just something that you play. And it's really dismissed as those sorts of things, as opposed to kind of taken as serious research, taken as the kind of value that it is. And it's quite ironic for me because, you know, Maarten, as you were mentioning earlier, some of the great scientists of our time, if you read their lectures, if you read their public comments, they always talk about play, and they always talk about the kind of joy of that. So I don't understand why it is dismissed as a mode of practice and as a mode of research. And I think, you know, we deliberately go and play games in the courtyard where all the other departments have to watch us, and they have to see the joy that we're doing from that, and the kind of learning that's actually happening and in that case, an embodied game, because we play physical games there. And, you know, I think we need to push ourselves out there, expose the rest of the campus to us and to the kind of playful modes of engagement that are so valuable. Yeah, so it's exposure that I think we should really be looking
Yeah, thanks for that, Kieran. Exposure, yeah, that I think is a very good point, and it creates awareness as well. And yeah, the consent one, how I do it is I invite, even if I'm talking about the game with cameras on Zoom, I just invite people to participate, and if they don't, then that's fine too, and you can leave your camera on. I think how it works in my mind is that it's very clear to me that play is very individual and subjective. So everyone have their own play, as I said in the beginning, but that's also for education. Everyone has their own way of learning, and there's a lot of overlap. And you just, for me, being playful and offering play and games is just another opportunity to cast a wider net to get people enjoy their learning, and then you come back where I started with is creating joy. I think learning can be very enjoyable, and learning is really a human experience, and the seriousness can really kill it for a large chunk of the people, if not all. And yeah, and just having these conversations with you guys, it was really great to share your thoughts. I think is already a step for awareness and showing that there is more to it, and I think about it and learn from each other. I've learned from you as well, and I think I would love to talk a little bit more, but we're now at 10 minutes for questions. I would really like if there's any questions for anyone listening to us. If there are any, are people listening? I haven't got my Twitch channel open, so I don't know. But please feel free to put some questions, and then we'll try to address it as playfully as we can, I suppose.
Sure. So we had a lot of questions already answered. I think you guys did a great job there. One of the questions I saw here was, what if we had department meetings or committee meetings that typically started with short 5 to 10 minute games?
Yeah, I think that would be good suggestion. It immediately triggered me a story about I don't know how much of true it is, but Shell is a company from the Netherlands, and that's where I'm from. So it's a common myth, I suppose, where they wanted to. It was not about playful. I think it's just all about money, and that's actually my answer to the question of Kieran, why science has become more serious. I think money is involved. You need to already invent a product that creates money before you invent it, which is of course not possible. Anyway, I'm not going there tonight. But where they wanted to make the board meetings more economical, so everyone had to stand on one leg, and then as soon as one of the persons couldn't stand on one leg anymore, board meeting was over. I've not done it with my research lab yet, but I'm now remembering it. I think it should be cool to make it very short and snappy. Yeah, good suggestion, especially the icebreakers I've been doing with students that are very short, like 5-10 minutes, would be, I think, really refreshing to do that in board meetings. Chris, are you going to do that, do you think, or are you already doing that?
Oh, I would already love that. I just thought about, I do a warm-up exercise for some classes with story cubes, right, with students, and it's so flexible and versatile. And I just started picturing when I saw Nick's suggestion of starting meetings with games, we could do story cubes and like imagine what your department will do next year. Roll the cubes, or and so on, or do it collaboratively. So I love this idea, whether it were connected in that way or just to start the meetings with something fun, just to change the spirit and energy. I think that would be so awesome.
I love alibi, and so I think adult learners need the alibi of knowing what official serious purpose this thing is for. So like stealthing the story cubes under a very serious purpose might be what some cultures of work need in order to do something playful for a hot minute.
Okay, so our next question is, I'm actually going to ask two in this one. Academia is often made up of teaching and researching. How can you be more playful in the way that you research? And any thoughts on play as research are especially welcome there.
So I mean, play as research. I'm actually running a course for my 4th year students this year on playful research, and how the act of playing can be research, and how we're kind of looking through the act of playing as the body and site of the generation of knowledge, and thinking that through. I mean, obviously, the subject matter for these students is games, so it makes sense that we kind of situate it in those kinds of things. In terms of I think for me, changing the language of a lot of the way that we talk about and engage with research, which is why the zones of connection has actually been so nice. We haven't met each other as panelists, and here we are having an enjoyable conversation with each other, which in some ways is not directly playful maybe, but we're in that same vulnerable state that we might be when we're playing. We're open to it, we're listening to stuff, we're going, oh, that's really cool. We're enjoying John's gestures in the background, and I think that in academic writing, there might be that freedom to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more conversational, a little bit more, I learned this thing, it's really beautiful, here, I want to share it with you, as opposed to, and again, Maarten, this might link to that thing of, scientific academia, you have to do the right steps and you have to meet all of that. So I certainly think there's scope for a playfulness in how academics approach their publishing. But yeah, playing as a form of research is really valid and a really interesting way to go. So yeah, it's something that we're looking into quite a lot in our department.
Yeah, Kieran, can I enroll in that course, Playful Research? Sounds really cool. I think what is already there, and what is the norm if you talk about playfulness in research, in my experience with biomedical research, and when you look at Nobel Prize laureates, etc., is the playfulness in the connection between the people. So then if they actually never have used the word my lab is playful or anything, but because they have lab socials, there is some light banter, or there's some they publish papers with based on a pun, for instance. So they're doing all their serious papers, but then I also do something less serious. And you see that in those meetings, and then when a PhD student is presenting their results, it is a very more casual kind of interaction, but I've never thought about it that they're being playful. But it is something I'm thinking of, because I am wearing these two hats as running a research lab on kidney research and doing education and a Playful University. And I don't have the answer for it other than that, recognizing that, and with the story cubes would be a good one also for brainstorming, because quite often in research you have blocks, right? So the data is not what you expected, you don't know it, and if you don't roll the cubes, you just associate things. That might help, and I know that some research do similar things like that. But yeah, it's a super valid question and super interesting to see where that goes in the future. Any other questions, Andy?
Yeah, okay. Our next question is, what are your views on managing the balance between play and a need to meet specific learning and work goals?
Yeah, I think balance is. I think if you really look on the different layers of requirements and needs, it's going to be, I think, from my point of view, very personal. It's how your relationship with your line managers, and but also your relationship with with what you want with your work, with your research, or with your education, and how much playful you will want to be versus how much output driven. So I think the balance is going to be uniquely you. That's what I believe. So if I would turn it around in an advice, I would say connect really well with what is the fears for you. Why are you afraid of being playful, or what are your fears, and see what is actually realistic, or what is really there, or what is more imagined, and then find a way where the balance works for you. And of course, that's dependent on so many factors. It depends on how many hours, depends on the courses you teach. So I don't have another answer than that. Maybe panel members have something to add there.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Okay.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, let's see if we have another question here. Actually,
Sorry, and John wanted to add something to that. John, go ahead.
Very, very briefly. The answer for me is associated with, and this may be smaller scale than the question asker was wondering, but is this a lesson I'm going to use over and over again? The Power of Moments by the Heath brothers told me that students remember the peak moments of a course, often towards the end. So if I can invest in making one shining star lesson inside of a material that I use all the time, then for me it is totally worth it to use my quieter times of the year to prep my super duper playful experiences.
Yeah, I would kind of build on that too, because I think it is a really important question. It's one that we do address, is thinking about people's goals. But I guess sometimes you can reframe it to say, like, how does play align with those learning goals, right? That seems like it's, and sometimes it doesn't. Or it may not for someone. Someone may not be able to make that work, or their conception of play doesn't quite fit with what they saw as their learning goal. So I do think it's an individual set of questions, but it turns us back to thinking about what play is, and what it does. So this has been a pleasure, by the way. I just want to say that since we're getting close. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we're in our last few minutes here, so let's go around and just tell everyone how they can connect with you online or view some of the stuff that you've written.
Yeah, So I've my Playful University project is the Playful University dot I don't know dot co.uk. No, ac.uk. But yeah, Maarten Koeners, Koeners. You will find on Twitter, Instagram, and some papers on the physiology of play. I wrote a paper about that, so you can find me there. Yeah, that's about it, I suppose. Kieran?
So if you search for Wits Digital Arts, you'll find our full program, and hopefully my email address is on the website. And on Twitter, I just have to read it because I keep forgetting. It's KJ Reed SA, so KJREID SA.
John?
After this panel, I know that I'm going to be making some of my students play Ninja, but if you want to keep in touch with me, you can find me under my nom de jus, John Cole, at johncole.itch.io, or my nom de travail, John Lutz, at bit.ly/edularpmn.
And for me, Chris Jeansonne, you can certainly find me at my my emails, jeansc at rpi.edu. I have a website that's under my name as well, but that's going to be much more about pedagogy and doesn't revolve as much around the gameful pedagogy work that I'm just building right now. So hopefully it will start to. But yeah, reach out to me. I'm excited about this work.
Kieran and Chris and all our watchers for joining to this session. I think this is such an exciting topic and so much more to talk about and to connect. And I think there's a lot of initiatives out there that can create together more awareness and more knowledge about these things. Yeah, and I think this zones of connection is also a great example of how all kinds of walks of life and different disciplines can have meaningful conversations about playful academics or playfulness in general. I think that is also an important and exciting subject. So thank you everyone. And then I think we're out of time, right? Yeah. All right.